Trump heads to Europe for summit with trade allies in a storm of tweets slamming China and worst deals, but not a word about Putin ahead of Friday meeting. President Donald Trump is headed back to Europe hoping to receive a friendly welcome in Poland despite lingering skepticism across the continent over his commitment to NATO, his past praise of Russian President Vladimir Putin and his decision to pull the US out of a major climate agreement. The US President and his wife, Melania Trump, took off for Warsaw on Wednesday morning for a brief visit before a gathering of the G20 in Germany. President Trump made it clear that trade and North Korea would be at the top of his agenda in a series of tweets he sent out just before he left the White House that mentioned China and bad deals, but said nothing about Moscow or Putin. The United States made some of the worst trade deals in world history. Why should we continue these deals with countries that do not help us, he said in one. Several minutes later, Trump tweeted, "Trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter. So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try." He told reporters soon after, as he was boarding Marine One, that the US would do very well in the talks this week, in response to shouted questions about North Korea. Trump arrives in Poland, an ex-communist country that is now one of the United States' staunchest European allies, later on Wednesday for a short stay that includes a speech in Krasinski Square, near the site of the 1944 Warsaw Uprising against the Nazis. He'll also meet with the leaders of Poland and Croatia and hold a joint news conference with Polish President Andrzej Duda. It will be the American media's first opportunity to question the US president at a news conference in almost a month. Before moving on to an international summit in Germany, the president will also hold meetings with the leaders of a dozen countries located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas at a summit of the Three Seas Initiative, which aims to expand and modernize energy and trade. One of the initiative's goals is to make the region less dependent on Russian energy. The White House said last week that Trump would like to develop a common approach to Russia, while he is abroad during a briefing where top US officials would not commit to a discussion with Putin about Moscow's election meddling. As the president has made clear, he'd like the United States and the entire West to develop a more constructive relationship with Russia. But he's also made clear that we will do what is necessary to confront Russia's destabilizing behavior, Trump's chief national security aide, H.R. McMaster, said. Trump's stop in Poland on the way to Germany is both functional and symbolic in nature. The US ally will meet Trump's demand that NATO members meet or exceed their pledge to spend 2% of their GDP on the group's common defense. It is in many ways a front-line NATO nation in connection with threats on the eastern flank, McMaster said last week. In his speech, Trump will thank the country for partnering with the US in combat missions in Afghanistan and in Iraq and express his desire to create robust, open, and fair markets that drive economic growth and leave no countries hostage to energy market manipulation, McMaster said. Even if he doesn't mention Putin or Russia outright, just stepping foot in Poland sends a powerful statement, said Jim Carafano, a foreign policy analyst at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. Carafano told the Associated Press, "Europe is working for energy independence, looking for free market solutions, and Poland is in the middle of that energy corridor, so it makes so much sense that the president would go there and talk about energy policy." At the same time, Trump will have to balance his visit to Europe with escalating tensions with North Korea, after the US concluded Tuesday that North Korea had test-launched its first intercontinental ballistic missile. The US, South Korea, and Japan responded to the provocation by requesting an emergency session of the UN Security Council, scheduled for Wednesday afternoon. Trump returns to Europe after a shaky first trip to the continent in May and signs of unhappiness around the globe with the start of his presidency. A recent Pew Research Center survey of attitudes toward Trump in more than 36 countries found fewer than 3 in 10 respondents expressing confidence in his ability to do the right thing on international affairs. Most of those surveyed disapproved of Trump's major policies, including temporarily halting travel from 6 mostly Muslim countries. Among the 37 countries Pew surveyed, Trump scored higher marks than his predecessor, President Barack Obama, in only 2, Russia and Israel. Trump's first trip to Europe as president in May saw a series of awkward encounters, including a tough speech to the leaders of NATO countries urging them to spend more on their armed forces, an uncomfortable handshake with France's new president, and a caught-on-camera moment when Trump pushed past the Prime Minister of Montenegro, Europe's newest country, while squeezing his way to the front of a crowd. Poland may offer Trump a chance to shine. According to Polish media reports, Poland's government promised the White House a reception of cheering crowds as part of its invitation. To make good on that pledge, ruling party lawmakers and pro-government activists plan to bus in groups from the provinces to hear Trump's speech. The White House didn't respond to a request for comment on those reports. With Trump's sights already set on the 2020 election, his visit to Poland could also be seen as a power play for battleground states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, which are home to hundreds of thousands of Polish-American voters. Trump will also seek to use Poland as an exemplar of partnership. A U.S. ally in Iraq and Afghanistan, Poland is one of the 5 NATO members that spends at least 2% of their gross domestic product on the military. That's something that Trump, and U.S. leaders before him, have demanded of NATO allies. Trump has scolded other NATO members for falling short on their commitments. Poland is also host to about 1,000 U.S. troops, and is supporting U.S. and NATO forces in Iraq and Afghanistan. It's also a regular customer for U.S. military equipment. Before Trump's arrival, Poland's government emphasized that Russia's aggression in Ukraine poses a threat to the whole of Europe, something that will inevitably be raised in discussions with Trump as Europeans seek to gauge the president's willingness to confront Putin before their first face-to-face meeting later this week. Poland is, in some ways, a poster child for some of the issues that the Trump administration has been stressing, said Jeffrey Rathke, Deputy Director of the Europe Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. They're betting that this relationship with the United States on defense will balance their concerns about the possible directions of U.S. Russia policy. Poland also hopes Trump's visit will reinforce its position with European partners as it faces allegations of backsliding on democracy. The right-wing government is also one of only 3 European Union countries, along with Hungary and Austria, refusing to accept any relocated refugees, in legal violation of EU quotas. Trump,